Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claudine Cohen, Managing Partner of Value 360 at Cohen Resnick. For today's current installment of Dealmakers Unplugged, I have Daniel Ron, Managing Director of Forge52 Capital Partners. Daniel, welcome and glad to have you with me today.
It's great to be here, Claudine.
So, to kick things off, Daniel, maybe you can just give a brief overview or introduction to Forge 52 and a little bit about the fund. You're fairly new. I think you've been going about a year, and just some of your strategies.
We are a fairly new firm. We are an operationally oriented private equity firm investing in family and founder owned manufacturing companies. We're looking to partner with owners really who care about their legacy and what happens to their company after they might exit their operating role. Our founders and our anchor investors are the Gutierrez family in Mexico, who are third generation owner operators of a 9,000 employee steel and steel products company. They really envisioned our firm as a way to leverage the experience they had growing and professionalizing their family business to manufacturing companies in North America.
Daniel, given the family's focus in manufacturing and having grown up in that environment, I assume that's why you've decided just to keep quite a narrow focus in manufacturing as a firm.
No, that's exactly right, and it was really the family's M&A activity, acquiring add-ons for their family business in the U.S. and then adding value to their operations that catalyzed their thinking around founding this firm.
Daniel, you mentioned in your value creation approach in our prior discussions that you rely heavily on operating partners to come in and work with you going forward. At what point are you introducing the operating partner into the mix? And how do you ensure that that there's the right chemistry and that the management team have a willingness and openness to work with an operating partner because they've been working in the business for so long prior to bringing in private equity ownership, and now they have maybe a new boss in addition to the private equity owner.
So we involve our operating partners intimately in every stage of the investment process, starting with sourcing. We reach out to owners under the operating partner's name. We think it's better to begin a relationship with an operator to operator discussion than operator to private equity professional. Um, Operating partners are uh, deeply involved in every part of due diligence. They help us get smart about the company. They help us ask the right questions. Critically, they help us understand on which issues to push on and what are just things that we can easily fix post closing. Post closing, our operating partners serve as executive chairman of the company. This is not a simple advisory role, it's really a 10-hour a week plus part time job working directly with the company, where the operating partner's role is to work hand in hand with management to first build out the value creation roadmap and then provide oversight and guidance to management on what's typically a daily basis.
So that chemistry between the management team and the operating partner, you're going to know if that's a fit very early on because they're with you pre-closing, at the sourcing stage, and throughout the process.
Yeah, we hate surprises, and so by the time that we close, we want to make sure that, as you said, there's chemistry between the team and the operating partner. They like each other, they respect each other, they're excited to work together. And again, the nice thing about our model is they've had a lot of touch points over the course of due diligence. So when we do close and we get to work, there really shouldn't be any surprises, and people should be ready to go.
And with your bench of operating partners, they people I assume that you've worked with in the past that maybe have been a COO or even a CEO at a prior portfolio company, or they've come through your network. But I think one of the things you mentioned was, we've got a big independent sponsor ecosystem out there, and many of the independent sponsors include people who've been operators. I mean, they've been operators their whole life. They now want to have an opportunity to be on the investment side, not only working in the company. And you at times will look to source some opportunities from independent sponsors that have deep operational experience or deep operators.
Yeah, and then one of the nice things about our model is that an independent sponsor can really slot in to the operating partner role. Um, in terms of sourcing, in terms of being a partner in due diligence and adding industry experience, and then as serving as effectively as the executive chairman role, where they are taking point on day to day implementation and management of the value creation plan.
And many of your operating partners you have will bring a thesis to you. Is that a fair statement?
It is. We Most of our sourcing is actually based on industry subverticals that our operating partners know, like, are excited about owning a company in, and then we'll go and pursue a business together based on that thesis.
And then post closing, so you mentioned your ops partners take that role or take on that role as executive chairman. It's around 10 hours a week. I assume over time, and you've got your value creation playbook, does that look different depending on the industry and the operating partner? Is there flexibility around that, or you've got a very defined playbook and that's what you want to use?
We have a high level defined playbook in terms of how we look to create value, which is really focused on um, capabilities by business function. We look to sort of define current state, define an end state, then lay out a plan to get from current to end state over the course of the hold period. The operating partners have a lot of flexibility in how they work with the portfolio companies. We don't require that they be on site. We're not looking at how much time they're spending, day to day. The way that the value creation process realistically works over the hold period, though, is that upfront, maybe unsurprisingly, the operating partner is going to be spending a lot of time with management getting the ball rolling. And then over the course of the hold period, as management really gets its bearings and can take the ball and run with it, that time commitment gets less and less.
And I assume, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but if your hold period is, call it 3 to 5 years, at some point that operating partner's role is phasing out and the company's becoming a lot more standalone and able to execute and do all the things because you're going to prepare for an exit at some point down the line.
That's exactly right. I would say by the time that we're ready to exit, the operating partner can be, more of a strategic advisor, but is not going to be involved in, working with the team in terms of day to day blocking and tackling. As you said, the company has to stand on its own. When we want to sell it, it needs to be managed within the four walls by the team, which is going to give that next buyer confidence.
And early on with that, I'm assuming there's the 100-day plan and that there's certain KPIs that you really want to focus on. And the operating partner is obviously working with you to make sure you get the information. Uh, how long into that kind of first, I don't want to call it the honeymoon period, but the period from closing to however long, do you focus on these KPIs and see if your plan is starting to work or if you have to modify, pivot, and maybe even the operating partner needs to step in more than you would have expected.
I would say by the end of due diligence, you have a good understanding of how much involvement they have to have. You can't help but learn about the company's capabilities over the course of a deep due diligence process. We look to get reporting and KPIs in place effectively immediately as soon as we can. Um, what we're looking for early on, it's not necessarily improvement in the KPIs. We're much more focused on building momentum and building trust and credibility with the team. You have to remember we're working with founder family held companies. There's almost inevitably a strong culture that's been driven by inertia and maybe a few key personalities. And we take a crawl, walk, run approach to value creation. So we want to start small. We want to build credibility with the team and the employees by achieving small victories that demonstrate real tangible value creation and make their lives better, make them more efficient and productive. Once we have that, then we can ramp up the pace of change and value creation with the team on board and supportive.
Got it. And I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but as you look from that day one to exit and your value creation plan, I mean, what if your goal is a 3 or 4x, and yeah, you might get a 10x, but what how much of that is related to the hardcore value creation plan versus some acquisition related growth over time?
The two are one. And when I say that, part of our value creation model is to build an internal M&A engine within every company, because we know that our target buyers, which are primarily, call it 500 million to $1 billion private equity funds, are going to place a premium on companies that can grow both organically and inorganically in a sustainable, repeatable way. So a component of our value creation model across companies would be to put in place an M&A engine inside the company that goes with the company at sale that can source, diligence, close, and ultimately integrate companies with a defined playbook on a repeatable basis.
Daniel, in closing, is there anything else you'd like to add around your operating partner model, your conviction around it, as well as what differentiates you in the market?
Yeah, we own, by definition, the companies that we own, we're owning them at an inflection point between private ownership, where they have been operating oftentimes in a steady state, maybe with flat revenues, and institutional ownership, where there's a drive and expectation towards growth and a much more institutional infrastructure based approach. And we think the best way to do that is by leaning on someone who knows both the operating world and private equity, and have them serve as the frontline relationship and value driver, interacting both with the company on the front end and the private equity firm behind them.
Great. So, Daniel, thank you for joining us today. That's the end of our current episode of Dealmakers Unplugged.
Thank you.